I was 8 months into retirement, sitting on a first-class flight to Italy, and I realized I was checking my email for a call that would never come. I was more stressed on that vacation than I ever was closing a deal. Everyone told me I'd know when I was ready to retire. I signed the papers in my lawyer's office in Boca, completely confident, and for 8 months, I was completely wrong. I'm Alan. I'm 68. I built a business that was designed to run without me, and when it finally did, I felt like a ghost in my own house. I want to talk about the one piece of advice everyone gives that skips the hard, quiet part that comes after the paperwork. That first Monday with no office to go to, I drove to the diner, the same booth where I'd made a dozen handshake deals over eggs. I just sat there. The waitress, Maria, she's known me for 20 years. She brought my coffee, black, and looked at me. "No meeting today, Mr. Rosen?" I said, "No, just coffee." She nodded, and I saw it in her eyes, a kind of pity. She'd watched me build something from that booth, and now she was watching me not know what to do with it. I bought a set of expensive golf clubs that week, used them twice. They're still in the garage, a monument to a guess I got wrong. Barbara found me one afternoon just staring at the pool, not reading, not swimming. She didn't say anything. She just put a hand on my shoulder and left it there. The silence said everything. I built a life that didn't need me anymore. The advice out there, it's all about the finish line, crossing it. What nobody tells you is what happens in the stadium after everyone's gone home. The first piece I stopped believing? That retirement is a permanent vacation. I booked that trip to Italy because I could, spent a fortune, and I was miserable. The days blurred. Tuesday felt like Saturday, and not in a good way. I was waiting for a purpose to arrive like room service. It doesn't work like that. I was so used to pressure defining my day that without it, the day had no shape. I'd wake up in a beautiful hotel and my first thought was, what's the move? And there was no move. That's the vacation they sold me. It felt like being adrift. The second piece, you'll have more time for hobbies. That assumes you have hobbies that matter to you. I didn't. I had a business. They're not the same muscle. I tried woodworking. My first birdhouse. Look, the squirrels wouldn't go near it. It was lopsided. A metaphor. I bought a boat, a beautiful thing. Then the maintenance became a part-time job I resented. I was trading one set of logistics for another, with none of the payoff. Barbara watched me tinker with the engine one Saturday, getting more and more frustrated. She said, "You're trying to fix something that isn't broken." She wasn't talking about the boat. I was trying to manufacture a sense of accomplishment, and you can't do that. A hobby has to come from a different place. It has to be about the doing, not the result. I never learned that language. The third and the biggest one for me was the promise of freedom. You'll finally be free. They don't account for the loss of identity that freedom can bring. I was at a charity dinner about 6 months in. Nice event. A man asked me, "So what do you do?" I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. For 40 years, I had an answer. It was my handshake, my introduction. That night I fumbled. I said, "I'm retired." It sounded so small, so finished. He just nodded and turned to talk to someone else. I caught myself calling my son Daniel later that week, asking him detailed questions about his tech job, just to hear the terminology, just to feel connected to a world of motion. Freedom, for a guy who built his own anchor, felt like being untethered, and that's terrifying. The turning point wasn't some grand revelation. It was Barbara, of course. We were pulling out of our daughter Rachel's driveway. The kids were waving, and Barbara said, without looking up from her window, "You need a project, not a pastime." Just like that. It took me a week to really hear it. A pastime fills hours. A project has a spine. It has a beginning and eventually an end. It matters. So I started volunteering, quietly, no fanfare. I teach basic business principles at a community center downtown. How to read a balance sheet, how to negotiate without burning a bridge, simple things. I don't put my name on anything. I just show up. And for 2 hours a week, I'm not Alan Rosen, retiree. I'm Alan, who knows a few things that might be useful. That's the project. This channel became part of it too, a way to structure my thinking, to connect again, but on different terms. I'm not saying don't retire. I'm saying the advice out there is often about the logistics, the money, the exit strategy. It skips the interior work. The 8-month mark is when the facade cracks. When you realize you weren't just retiring from a job, you were retiring from a version of yourself. And you have to decide who's left in the room. It's the hardest transition I've made since starting over broke at 31, but it's also the most necessary. If any of this sounds familiar, if you're in that quiet stadium or you're looking at it from the track, tell me in the comments where you are in this. I read them. It helps more than you'd think. Can you be completely confident about I was? For 8 months. Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Alan Rosen. I'm 68, and I want to talk about the one piece of retirement advice everyone gives you that I stopped believing after 8 months of living it. The advice is, you'll know when you're ready. I was so sure I knew. The moment was in my lawyer's office in Boca, signing the final papers, handing over the last set of keys that meant anything. I walked out of there feeling lighter than I had in 30 years, certain, and I was wrong. The 8-month mark is when the whole facade cracked. I was so confident, and I was so wrong. That confidence led directly into the first Monday. I had nowhere to be, no office to go to. So I got in the car and I just drove. Ended up at this diner I used to go to for deal-making breakfasts. The same booth by the window. I ordered coffee, and I just sat there for 2 hours, watching people come and go, all of them with someplace to be. I felt like a ghost. I'd bought a new set of golf clubs, expensive ones, the kind you see in magazines, thinking that's what you do. Used them twice. They're in the garage now, still in the plastic. A symbol of something I thought I was supposed to want. Barbara found me one afternoon, maybe a month in. I was just staring at the pool, not reading, not swimming, not even thinking really, just staring. She didn't say anything at first. Then she said, "You look lost in your own backyard." And she was right. I built a life, a business that was designed to run perfectly without me. And when I finally got it, I felt like a ghost in my own house. A spectator. That feeling, that quiet dislocation, set the stage for the first big piece of advice to unravel. The first piece of advice that started to crumble was this idea that retirement is a permanent vacation. I thought, okay, I'll take a vacation. So I booked a last-minute trip to Italy. First class because I could. We're in a beautiful hotel in Florence and I'm checking my email. Constantly, waiting for a call that I knew logically would never come. Barbara finally took my phone at dinner. She said, "The deal isn't here, Alan." The days started to blur. Tuesday felt like Saturday, and not in a good way. It felt like being untethered. I was more stressed sitting at that cafe than I ever was closing a deal. And that's when I realized a vacation only works when you have something to vacation from. So I moved to the next piece of advice. You'll have more time for hobbies. I thought, fine, I'll get a hobby. I tried woodworking, bought all the tools, probably spent $3,000 setting up a garage workshop. My first birdhouse was so lopsided, I swear the squirrels looked at it with pity. I bought a boat, a 28-footer. The maintenance alone became a part-time job I resented. I realized I never actually developed a hobby. I had a business. They're not the same muscle. One is for filling time. The other was my identity, which leads to the third piece, the big promise. You'll finally be free. I was at a charity dinner about 6 months in. Nice event. Someone asked, "So Alan, what do you do?" I fumbled. For the first time in 40 years, I had no answer. I think I said, "I'm retired." It sounded hollow, even to me. I caught myself calling my son Daniel out on the West Coast, asking him about his tech job, just to hear terms like quarterly projections and market fit. Freedom, for a guy who built his own anchor, just felt like drifting, and that's terrifying. The advice nobody gives you is that just relax ignores a fundamental need. Some of us are built for a certain kind of pressure. Without it, the walls feel too quiet. That terror was the low point. It's where Barbara, as always, stepped in. We were having coffee on the terrace. She put her cup down and said, "You need a project, not a pastime." Just like that. It took me a week to understand she wasn't talking about a boat. She was talking about contribution. So I started volunteering quietly, teaching business basics at a community center downtown. No fanfare, just showing up. The channel became part of that project, a way to structure my thinking. It's not a second act. It's a different kind of anchor. So here's what I'll say. I'm not against retirement. I'm against the advice that skips the hard, quiet part that comes after the paperwork. Money changes the problems. It doesn't make them disappear. If any of this sounds familiar, tell me in the comments where you are in this. I read them. It helps more than you'd think. My father used to say a man needs a reason to get up in the morning. Took me 8 months to learn he was right. That terror was the low point. It's where Barbara, as always, stepped in. We were having coffee on the terrace. She put her cup down and said, "You need a project, not a pastime." Just like that. It took me a week to understand she wasn't talking about a boat. She was talking about contribution. So I started volunteering quietly, teaching business basics at a community center downtown. No fanfare, just showing up. The channel became part of that project, a way to structure my thinking. It's not a second act. It's a different kind of anchor. So here's what I'll say. I'm not against retirement. I'm against the advice that skips the hard, quiet part that comes after the paperwork. Money changes the problems. It doesn't make them disappear. If any of this sounds familiar, tell me in the comments where you are in this. I read them. It helps more than you'd think. My father used to say a man needs a reason to get up in the morning. Took me 8 months to learn he was right. So here's what I actually think. The advice isn't wrong because it's a lie. It's wrong because it's incomplete. It's the first chapter of a book nobody gives you. The part where you have the money, the time, the freedom, and a quiet voice asking, "Is this all?" That's the part you have to write for yourself. And nobody can tell you how that chapter goes. Money changes the scenery. It doesn't change the play. If any of this landed for you, go ahead and like the video. It helps more than you'd think. And I'd really like to hear from you in the comments. Tell me this, what's the one piece of retirement advice you heard that didn't match your reality? Or if you're not there yet, what's the thing you're quietly most worried about when you picture that day? I read them. Barbara and I talk about them. It's become part of the project. Subscribe if you want to catch the next one. I don't have a schedule. I just talk when I have something to say. All right, thanks for your time.